It's time to have your say. Welcome back to the Q&A. Ask SCW, answering your questions in the wrestling community. Episode 100 starts straight after this. So here we are then, Ask SCW, episode 100 is here. And just before I go into the questions this week, I genuinely just want to say thank you to everybody that has supported this series. Whether you've been asking questions, whether you've just been watching along, whether you've shared it with friends, I just want to say thank you. Honestly, without you guys and girls, this is nothing, so thank you so much. And like I say, made it to episode 100. Going to be answering questions today on WWE, NXT, AEW. We've got Impact Wrestling. We've got lots on the way. So if you also want to be involved on the next episode of Ask SCW, then all you got to do is drop a question, leave the hashtag AskSCW, do that in the comments here on YouTube, or you can do it on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. All are coming up on your screen right about now. And make sure to stick around to the end of the video as well. I'll give you an update on Ask SCW and what will be happening going forward. But without further ado, let's get on with our first question this week. And it comes from Corey BT saying, congratulations, man, and thank you for that. Who do you think will be the game-changing picks for Raw and SmackDown in the WWE Draft? And we're going to combine that with Austin Whitley's question of any shock draft picks coming. Superb questions to kick things off. And just to let you know that this upcoming week on SCW, it is draft week. That's right, because the draft is going to be starting on October 1st on SmackDown. And of course, that will continue with October 4th's Monday Night Raw. So I'll be giving my draft full predictions throughout the week, and as well as that, also we'll be giving you the results and stuff like that. We've got another Q&A coming up, so lots of things to digest, and there are videos already on the channel regarding the WWE Draft, and they'll be popping up on your screen throughout the video. But as for game-changing draft picks, perhaps shock draft picks we're looking at, we're talking the big names, aren't we? We're talking championships moving over shows, and I think the biggest sort of game-changing one we could get, I think many people assuming Big E going to win the WWE Championship on Monday Night Raw, that he would be a Raw superstar. Well, Roman Reigns has also been someone that has been on Raw this past week, winning 2 matches as well. Have you noticed that the ratings increased while Roman was on Raw as well this past week? Also, I wonder if that was a test in the water. Remember as well, Roman was not on the SmackDown portion of the UK tour. Could that be another tease coming up? So there could be the big shock that everyone thinks, well, hang on, the Bloodline has been controlling SmackDown for the last, year or so. Perhaps the whole Bloodline goes over to Monday Night Raw. That would be a big shock. And what if Big E and perhaps the New Day were on SmackDown? I think that would be a big change to go, because I think most people are assuming that Big E will be assigned Raw and Roman will remain on SmackDown. One other interesting note as well, I noticed this on WWE.com under the Superstars today, that Brock Lesnar is noted under the Raw brand on their website. I wonder if that's something as well that we could keep in mind also with Crown Jewel coming up. Also, is it Raw versus SmackDown with Roman versus Brock? Or is Roman also going to be a Raw superstar and that becomes a Raw branded championship match? Elsewhere, I think that could be interesting. What if someone like Shinsuke Nakamura was to go over to Raw and Damian Priest was to go to SmackDown, changing championships further? That would be a big way. I feel WWE is going to change the landscape. I think they're aware that the rosters are stale, so I expect wholesale changes throughout. What will be shocking at this point, I think it's actually the most unpredictable draft year ever, I would say. I think there are a few superstars that clearly are in need of direction and change of shows, but at the same time, even if you say Drew McIntyre seems likely to go to SmackDown, I think that that's a big coup for SmackDown, will be a big game changer, but at the same time I think that's a game changer because it keeps the character relevant rather than actually being a big surprise or shock when it comes to the WWE Draft. One other thing we have to say though, as I said, if Shinsuke was to go to Raw, what about the announcers? I mean, that's always something you could change up as well. WWE are no strangers to doing so. I need Pat McAfee to go wherever Shinsuke Nakamura goes, because without Pat McAfee, that Nakamura and Boogs entrance does lose a little bit of steam for me. Pat McAfee is also as much a part to play for it as Boogs is playing that guitar, and Nakamura just being, you know, the king of strong style that he is, wearing that crown. But as well, I mean, if that was to happen, Corey Grace could come to SmackDown. Everyone is predicting currently with keeping the couples together that Carmella will go to Raw. Well, that would keep her on SmackDown. Carmella has never left SmackDown since the draft began. So there's always these little twists and turns and stuff. And like I say, I will hold a bit more judgment just before we come to the full predictions video, purely on the basis that we've not had Extreme Rules yet. And I think that usually gives a better idea of what's going to happen. But for game changers or big shocks, I think the main one you're looking at is, I think the champions could change shows. We've had, you know, the WWE Championship and the Universal Championship set on these shows now for a good couple of years. It wouldn't surprise me if they were the ones to make the switch this year. One last quick note just before I go to the next question, and because I made a video on this and I've not had a chance to upload it, so I think here is the best place just to mention it. With the draft coming up, it's good to see where people are drafted, to see how relevant they are on shows. And I think looking at someone like Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, that could tell you a hell of a lot if they'll be staying or leaving WWE with their contracts coming up and expiring in the near future. Sami Zayn, of course, expiring before the end of the year, and Kevin Owens as well, meant to be expiring in January 2022. So, for example, looking last year, Kevin Owens, I believe, was a 3rd draft pick, Sami Zayn was a 4th draft pick. If they were like Aleister Black, who was in round 6 this upcoming year, I think that tells you a lot that they will be leaving WWE when those contracts do expire. If they actually drafted in a similar sort of position as they were last year or higher, this would either suggest that maybe they'll be signing with the company, or WWE has plans and wants to show intent on trying to get them to re-sign with the company. So that's something also to look out for this year when it comes to the draft. Next question coming from Mr. 1925. With CM Punk being a major game changer for AEW and Bryan Danielson not far behind him, who do you think would be also a huge asset from AEW's new developmental territory, WWE? Gotta say, I like what you did there. Another video that I wanted to do and I've not had the opportunity to do, this fits perfectly into it, is actually WWE superstars that I think would benefit from going to AEW. And I think there are some game changers that could be amongst there, even if they're not main eventers. So let's go through superstars I'd like to see leave WWE and go to All Elite Wrestling. Well, the first two, I mentioned them towards the end of the last question. It's Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Now, Kevin Steen was doing unrelentless work in Ring of Honor, former Ring of Honor World Champion. He obviously went to NXT as Kevin Owens and absolutely tore the territory there. Was a quick NXT champion, quickly got hot-shotted to the main roster, went into a program with John Cena, was the prize fighter. He even powerbombed Machine Gun Kelly off the stage on an episode of Raw. He became a long Universal Champion and probably one of the longest. He's probably still in the top 3 of Universal Championship runs. Of course, then he got squashed by Goldberg in 21 seconds in 2017, and it's been a bit up and down since, where we've kind of felt KO has been going to get to that next level, whether it's a headbutt on Vince McMahon, whether it's a championship match against AJ Styles. It's something just always fell off at the last second. Even when you got to WrestleMania last year, Kevin Owens getting that big win over Seth Rollins there in the, in the Performance Center, never really kicked into next gear. And same thing this year, big win at WrestleMania, gets to stun Logan Paul, doesn't really continue on the momentum. If anyone ever needed a Money in the Bank win to get that momentum to become WWE Champion again, it is Kevin Owens. But it just feels year on year, it just passes him by, and unfortunately, even with the program he had with Roman Reigns at the turn of the year, which I thought was a fantastic series of matches with him and Roman, I never for once believed that Roman was dropping that championship. It kind of felt like Kevin Owens could and should be that superstar that's pushed to that next level, and it's just not going to happen. I think in All Elite Wrestling, yeah, I don't expect him to go straight over there and be in matches with Kenny Omega or becoming world champion instantly, but I just feel like that we won't get this start-stop Kevin Steen. I think we'd get a direction, and we'd see a build of momentum continue with him throughout his career. Even if it's in the mid-card, going to upper mid-card, maybe eventually going to the world title picture, I think it would benefit him a hell of a lot. Same with Sami Zayn. I mean, Sami Zayn was like the most over guy at one point in NXT, was the most likable, kind of had that sympathy element that Shawn Michaels had in the ring, watching him as this babyface, and he went over to Raw and SmackDown and just was almost treated a bit like a joke, if we're honest. It was very geeky, very, unlikable, if you want, to the point they had to turn him heel. And don't get me wrong, I'm loving his heel gimmick and his heel character, but again, it just feels like that it never really is ever going to get over that sort of opening act to mid-card at best. It always feels like that first couple of matches on the pay-per-view, it's never going to get to that next level up. And I just feel with both of them, they're being held back. And I think that, if if you want, it's just they're unleashed in All Elite Wrestling. I think they could both do some incredible things, and I think it's an option that I'd like to see them explore. Another one would be AJ Styles. I mean, this one would be a game changer on name value. A champion wherever he's been. He's been the face of TNA. Of course, he's done it in Japan, Ring of Honor. He's been doing great things as well since coming to WWE, becoming WWE champion within 9 months of joining the company. I think he's won every championship actually going as well in like the 5, nearly 6 years he's been with the company. So that contract perhaps may expire in the near future. He's a gamer as well, so I imagine he's going to want to keep that Twitch channel alive and be doing that as well. So it may be, as AJ's coming towards the end of his career, that it may be more suitable with less dates and being involved in All Elite Wrestling. And of course, he's a former Bullet Club leader as well, so I mean, we have a couple of them that could be knocking around as well. I mean, Kenny Omega being one of them, Jay White if the Forbidden Door was to open, and why not the next superstar, Finn Balor? I think would be a great shout for it as well, because Finn, I really love Finn Balor. I think it's great what we see him on WWE TV, and his NXT run has been superb. I do feel that he was unlucky with the injury. Of course, he was the first Universal Champion, had to give it up. Just feels like there's not been that same belief since. And of course, if you know my predictions going to Extreme Rules, I think the Demon will be losing for the first time on the main roster this evening. I worry where he goes next. So for me, when that contract does come up, if he could go to AEW, imagine Omega, Jay White in the Forbidden Door, AJ Styles and Finn Balor, all the former Bullet Club leaders head to head in a 4-way. I think it's a dream match. Would love to see it. I think it'd be really, really awesome. I'm going to say a couple more. First off, Ricochet, I think would be awesome. I mean, Ricochet is just so underused in WWE. It's frustrating to see. This guy can do things that, I mean, I can't even imagine to do in the ring, and yet we don't get to see him explore it the same way that we did in NXT, or for example when he was Prince Puma in Lucha Underground or his time in Japan. I think that if he was on AEW, he's perfect for that mid-card, and he would do spectacular things that would just give you that wow factor. And I think AEW has a lot of those wow factor superstars, but Ricochet is one of the real true elite superstars when it comes to that, and I think he could really offer a lot to that program. I think the women's division would be awesome to see as well. Some superstars in WWE that are just not given that opportunity, and the one that really stands out to me right now, most of all, I've had to pick one, would be Toni Storm, just because, I mean, she had a great run in NXT UK, she did fantastic in the Mae Young Classic, but she sort of reminds me of Deonna Purrazzo, just not really been given that opportunity since, in NXT, the American NXT, she wasn't really winning matches. Yes, she got into the championship picture, but nothing really came of it. She's now gone to SmackDown. She's not really on TV at all. I mean, this week, she's more fascinated with what's going on with Boogs and the guitar backstage. We don't see it in rings. So I'm quite frustrated what I see there, and I think she's got the look of someone that could be a face of the division. She's got the in-ring talent. The gimmick is fun. So I think she could offer a lot if she was to come over to All Elite Wrestling. You've only got to look with Ruby Soho so far in the early stages of what she's brought to AEW. It's a completely different game of what we've seen in WWE. The potential that's there, it's just being brought to us in front of our very eyes, and we're seeing, hang on, why did WWE let her go? Why didn't they do this with her while she was in the WWE? And I think Toni Storm would be another one of those if she was to be in All Elite Wrestling. Just before I go to the next question, one though that I could see in the very near future would be Bray Wyatt going to AEW. Of course, he has been already let go by WWE. Of course, he has a 90-day non-compete clause, although if rumours are to be believed, that I've seen the rumour mill this week, Bray Wyatt can waive that 90-day non-compete clause if he chooses not to get paid for any of those 90 days, which of course would free open a debut for AEW this Wednesday in Rochester, New York. Of course, that's where Brody Lee is from, and of course that'd be a real big fitting tribute if he was to debut on this show. If he was to wait till the end of the 90-day compete clause, well, then he'd be there in time for Halloween as well. Perhaps he could even turn up at full gear, who knows. But if he was to turn up in AEW, I do think he would be leading the Dark Order, and I think that's definitely one to keep an eye out for this Wednesday on All Elite Wrestling Dynamite. Next question coming in from Ella J. Who do you see Roman Reigns dropping the championship to once he does? And I will combine that with Review Geek 3000's question with Roman featuring on Raw and SmackDown lately. Is he dropping the Universal title to either Brock, Balor or someone on Raw? Some really great questions there. Just to say very quickly, I don't think that it will be to Finn Balor, and I don't think it's going to be to Brock either. I mean, it's the most WWE thing ever, isn't it? Roman has this long championship reign, and Brock Lesnar, the guy, would be the one to take it off of him, a crown jewel. But I think it should be to build a new star. I think that would be the most exciting idea that could come out from this. I mean, it all depends really. It could be someone on Raw if Roman is drafted there. I mean, this is something we have to really take in consideration. But I think once the draft happens, Roman, I don't see on both shows unless they want to continue doing the wild card, brand for brand, quarterly invitational, whichever WWE idea they come up with. But if it was up to me, I mean, I said for the longest time I thought Drew McIntyre would be the one, because if you look, if Drew was to brought over to SmackDown, he then could perhaps take the belt off of Roman at WrestleMania, would give him that WrestleMania moment, that championship defining moment. Of course, as he's sort of gone through a year where he's not been winning matches on the big stage that well, of course losing to Bobby Lashley numerous occasions, that he couldn't challenge for the championship anymore. I think that that would be a long period with Drew without the championship, would give him the star power back to really cement him as a true full-time main eventer in WWE. The thing is though, as I said, building a new star, I think Damian Priest would be a great shout for that role as well. Imagine if Damian Priest won the Royal Rumble and then Damian Priest got the opportunity at WrestleMania and was then to be the one to dethrone Roman Reigns. It's something I would like to see, but if that can't happen, as an outside bet, why not Keith Lee? Bring Keith Lee back on TV, have him take on Roman Reigns. I really hope they're on the same show, because you just know they could do some epic matches if they were put together in a squared circle. And just before I go on to the next question, just want to give a shout out as well to Ella J. She was my guest this week on SCW Live, the Q&A that I do. We had a fantastic discussion over all sorts of things, including her time at NWA Empower. Also talks about the dream match that will be taking place at Bound for Glory, Deonna Purrazzo against Mickie James, getting her thoughts on the match. Lots of speculation as well about the PWI, who will be the top of the poll in the women's list. She wasn't giving anything away, even though I did try my very, very best. But lots of great detail in that. Highly recommend to go and check the episode out if you haven't already once you finish this episode. Next question comes from Non-Stop Wrestling Chat, saying congratulations on 100 episodes, man. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think I have a question that no one has asked. If you could interview any wrestler ever, who would it be, and what would you like to ask them? Well, that's a superb question, and it is a question I've never had in 100 episodes, so thank you very much. What I would say is, it's so difficult, but if you go ever, I mean, there's people that I turn around and say, if they were legends, I'd like to ask, and there is someone I'd really like in the current crop of wrestlers today. Looking at the legends, my favourite of all time is Rob Van Dam, so I think naturally that would be the person I would want to ask questions to. I'd like to go through his career, his time going through Extreme Championship Wrestling, talking about the transition into WWE. I'd like to talk about, obviously, his time as champion, of course, when he, won at One Night Stand 2006. Obviously, perhaps some of the controversies that led to him losing that championship, and just really going through his career. Really would be really cool to see maybe some little bit of hidden stories and details of things we don't know about. I mean, I was a big fan of always his series of matches up with Jerry Lynn. So yeah, I'd like to know a bit more just inside from what's going on in RVD's career, so that would be one that would really stand out. For the same reasons, HBK would be another one that would be on my list, because I mean, Shawn Michaels had a hell of a career where it's been part of a team of the Rockers, the breakups, the transition of becoming a single superstar, going through that new generation, becoming a main eventer, the Royal Rumble, being someone, how that feeling of winning, going in at #1, does it feel daunting being told you're going to start the match and you're going to win it like this? It seems like such a big thing. Of course, Ric Flair a couple of years earlier had done it from the #3 spot, but just seeing through that, and obviously the trials and tribulations of Shawn Michaels, going through the back injury as well, coming back and arguably, going through a series run that you could even argue topped his first run with the company, from 2002 to 2010, the difficulty, walking away in 2010, and yeah, of course, you've got to talk about that match in 2018, Crown Jewel, DX versus The Undertaker and Kane, the Brothers of Destruction. But so that's probably my ever choices. If I had to pick one from today, would actually be Deonna Purrazzo. I think she's awesome. I have really enjoyed her work since following her watching Ring of Honor. She was on the Women of Honor. Thought she was a standout at that point. Seeing her go to like NXT in the Mae Young Classic, I really enjoyed what she brought to the table, and I just felt disappointed that it never went further in WWE. But seeing what she's done since, you know, literally just taking over women's wrestling and Impact, being, you know, seems like a permanent stay as the Knockouts champion since, going through the Forbidden Door as well, going to Mexico with Triple Mania, now obviously NWA as well with the Empower show, and you know, will we get it with AEW, and who would she like to face, and like those sort of dream matches. So I think there'll be a fun interview as well. I know I'm kind of cheating and giving more than one name, but hey, it's episode 100. Hopefully I get away with it. Next question come from Wrestling by Waldridge. Congratulations on 100 episodes, brother. Still killing it with this show. Love it each week. Thank you so much. It means a lot with the kind words. What was the main inspiration behind starting up your YouTube channel? For instance, was it a specific time in wrestling? Love this question. It's a personal question, which I think is really fun to see in these Q&As as well. For me, basically, it started off with me just watching other people on YouTube, and I always would talk to my best friend James, who's been on the channel as well. In fact, he's on the This Week in Metropolis podcast as well, which is a non-wrestling podcast, but I recommend people to go and check it out if they haven't done already. But we used to have conversations for hours, and still do on a regular basis, about pro wrestling. And I remember just saying to him about, you know, stuff that I thought would come ahead, and a lot of stuff sometimes would play out. And you know, James said to me, well, why don't you give it a go? Why not go out there, say your voice and opinion on YouTube? And I thought to myself, yeah, it seems like a cool idea. And I think looking back at it, a period of wrestling, it was around the end of 2015 that I kind of made my mind up I'd start. I did feel it was a bit of a lackluster period in company history, and I think that I've always been someone that's been fantasy booking and stuff like that, and I kind of like to give my creative twist, and hopefully that's shown still in videos that I do today, and that people do enjoy those creative twists as well. So that's kind of where a lot of it kind of started and stemmed from. And the channel first started in 2016. I did have a break after about a year or so doing it, but yeah, I've come back into it in the last couple of years, done things that's been more my pacing, my schedule, my type of wanting inspiration for videos, rather than just sort of you know, giving things that maybe are new stuff, because and show stuff of when it's happening at that time in the morning, because my time zone is not the same as when a lot of this stuff happens and breaks, so I'm always a bit behind what's going on. So I like to do content that suits what I do better. So I think that's the inspiration of where it was starting. I think that's what it's evolved to where we are now. Speaking of This Week in Metropolis, they have the next question for us now. Congrats on the 100th episode, dude. Thank you very much. What's been the most challenging question you've ever received on the show? This is it. No, seriously, I always find that sometimes you get questions that could be to do with stuff that maybe it's not the strongest knowledge topic, so maybe you might have to do a bit of research and stuff. I remember at one point throughout the series getting asked about a load of series of, you know, death matches that were taking place in Japan, especially stuff from the 90s as well, which I must admit is definitely not my strongest point of following wrestling, especially growing up, mainly just watching WWE and WCW with a hint of ECW where I could. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of difficult when you get those sort of topics, but it's always a lot of fun. I mean, I actually went back to look what the first question I ever got on this series was actually, and the first ever question I got was, would CM Punk return to wrestling, back in episode 1. It just goes to show back then I think I said I hope it would happen, but didn't think it would at this point. So just because you get those questions in and sometimes you feel you have more knowledge on them, doesn't mean that you're any actually better off for actually giving the right answer when you look back at it over 100 episodes later. But at the same time, it's always a lot of fun, and whatever questions come in, I always try and answer them to the best of my ability. Speaking of CM Punk, WrestleRant13 for the next question now, also saying congrats, man, for 100 episodes. Thank you very much. Question, what are your thoughts on Punk bringing back his trunks? I must admit, I'm kind of neutral on the subject to a point. I mean, obviously, whatever is most comfortable for the performer. I suppose it's what I'm used to seeing, CM Punk in trunks. It did seem a bit weird on that first occasion, seeing him, you know, not in trunks at all now. But at the same time, had we seen that for the next 6 months, a year, we probably would have very quickly got used to it. But I suppose seeing the CM Punk that we saw back in sort of 2011, 2012, 13, it is what I'm more familiar with. So I guess, yeah, I'm okay with it. But I know a lot of people gave him a lot of grief on Twitter after All Out, and of course he did put the poll on as well. So yeah, I guess he's listening to the fans, and that's what you want to see at the end of the day. The fans are being listened to, so if we're getting what we want, or what fans are getting what they want, I guess then everybody's happy. Anthony New over the next question now. What are your thoughts on Mandy Roses' new trio, Toxic Attraction in NXT? I quite like him, tell the truth. I think it's a fun, different direction. I think Gigi Dolan really is something completely different to what we've seen in WWE, along with JC Jane. I think that as a team, they offer something different to anything else we see within amongst WWE. Mandy Rose herself has gone through a transition from what we saw as like this sort of babyface this time a year ago in WWE to sort of now going to that, if you want traditional, it'd seem perhaps towards the end of the 90s kind of edgy, you know, you won't get to kind of be with me kind of character, but I think it suits her, and I think a bit of attitude is good. I like the fact that they almost are very such a rebel sort of stable. I don't think we've seen enough female stables in wrestling either, so I like what this trio represents. I do think that the Women's Tag Team Championships will be coming to this stable very soon, and yeah, I see positive things up to this point. I've got nothing negative to say. I'm intrigued to see what they're going to do on NXT 2.0 going forward. Martin Lorenzo Carrillo, the next question now. Why hasn't the Intercontinental Championship been featured that much on SmackDown? Could it be due to maybe the mid-card title switching brands during the draft? And what would be your pros and cons if this were to happen? And I'm thankful to be part of this 100 Ask SCW, and there is 100 more still to go. Well, thank you for that. It really does mean a lot, and I appreciate everyone that's always asking questions on this channel. Obviously, without you guys and girls, it's not anything, so thank you so much. As to your question with the Intercontinental Championship, obviously we had the match this past week on SmackDown. Shin seems to get a lot of TV time, but like you said, we've not really seen the IC title defended on pay-per-views, particularly I think is it since WrestleMania Backlash or something like that? It's been many months without the IC title on pay-per-view, and could it be that maybe the Intercontinental Championship could be going to Raw? Like I said, the pros and cons to that, if it does, Shin's never been on Raw, so that would be fresh in itself. On the flip side, that would mean obviously the other mid-card championship would go over to SmackDown. I think Damian Priest would do pretty well over there, same as on Raw. I think Damian Priest has been one of the best Raw booked superstars of the entire calendar year, if we're being honest. Him along with Riddle, I'd say, have been booked extremely well, but at the same time, Pat McAfee needs to be a part of Shin's entrance along with Rick Boogs. They need to remain as that trio, so if that happens, I need Pat McAfee on Raw and Corey Graves on SmackDown. That's what I would like to see if there was that shake-up. But it's interesting. I hope that there's going to get more TV time with it. It feels that at the moment the United States Championship is given more of the priority. I don't know if that's due to being more TV time on Raw compared to SmackDown, but at the same time, I do feel, looking at it, if you look at the two superstars, I think Damian Priest, they turn around and see, we can see a future main eventer with this guy. With Shinsuke Nakamura, I think they kind of think that's the level of where they're going to push him to. I don't think it's going to go any higher or further up the card than what it currently is. Supersonic with our next question now. Who do you think will be the first to hold the secondary AEW Women's Championship? Yes, as rumoured by Andrew Azarian this past week, apparently a TBS Championship will be introduced soon into AEW, of course, with the TNT Championship for the men. Of course, the shows are expected also to transition to TBS, so we could be getting a TBS Women's Championship. And obviously, AEW doesn't really treat it like a mid-card championship, but obviously it isn't the World Championship, so it's great for the up-and-comers in and amongst the company, because they've got so many people that could fit that role perfectly. And I think, for me, personally, I'm going to go for Tay Conti, just because I think she's improved so much in the ring since first seeing her a number of years ago. I think that she would be a great candidate to hold that championship. They may even do a tournament or some sort of style like that. For me, personally, I hope that's the situation. I wouldn't be surprised, though, as a name that I think would be, if I had to predict someone who would win it, I'd probably go for Jade Cargill, because I do think that they see a lot of potential in her, and I don't think they'll leave it too long until they can put some gold on her in All Elite Wrestling. FAF Wrestling, congrats on 100 episodes, bro. Thank you very much. What type of match would you have Ortiz and Santana versus the Lucha Bros be in? Obviously, that's where they're headed, and they've competed in many matches in Impact. They had a fantastic series of matches in Impact previously. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The only difference, of course, is with AEW, a lot of that audience is a much more mainstream audience. So despite the fact we may have seen some of these matches before, to see them again in AEW, it still would feel fresh and it would feel different. And I'm always partial to a ladder match. In fact, the way they did the ladder match with the Lucha Bros and the Young Bucks a couple of years ago at All Out was breathtaking. We've just had a steel cage match, so for me, I would probably be more partial partial to the ladder or some form of TLC style match. But at the same time, to take an Impact idea, why not a best of series? I remember when they used to do it with the Motor City Machine Guns and Beer Money, have like that best of 5 series. I think also Edge and Christian the Hardys did it back in WWE back in the day. So maybe they could do something like that, where they can do a best of series. We can have different style matches all the way through, and it culminates with like a 2-2 draw, and then the decider is at Full Gear in like a stupidly death-defying sort of ladder match of some description. So yeah, if I was booking it, that's how I'd like to see it. But definitely love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Mark Q World Order of our next question now. How excited are you for the return of Knockouts Knockdown? Think we'll get some surprises? I'm really looking forward to this pay-per-view. I really think that we're going to get something special with it. I must admit, I know they've recorded this show already, Impact, but I don't know much about it. I know a couple of names that are expected to be there in Lady Frost, who I think is an incredible in-ring talent. Have seen her previously in a couple of matches in Impact, and as well with NWA Empower. If I'm not mistaken, Mercedes Martinez as well is expected to be on this show. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. An all-women's pay-per-view, I'm always up for that. I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to bring to the table, but I don't know too much. Obviously, the match with Mickie James and Deonna Purrazzo has been put for Bound for Glory. Maybe there's some match with these two that they can still be involved in the show, maybe a tag team match or something to help build towards that pay-per-view as well. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's been many years since we've had it, but it's great to have it back. And you know, Impact has always been innovative when it has come to women's wrestling. I've always treated it with, you know, a lot of credibility, so I have no doubt that they can put on another killer pay-per-view with Knockouts Knockdown at the start of next month. Jonesy chats wrestling with our next question now. Congratulations on 100 episodes, thank you very much. My question to you is, if you could book an angle to end the pay-per-view tonight and shock WWE audience, what would you do and why? Awesome question, this one, and of course I have predicted that Roman Reigns will retain against Finn Balor, the Demon, this evening, but I have also predicted that Brock Lesnar will be in attendance. But if I was booking it and say you wanted something to shock and get everybody talking the next day, I think everybody and their gran is predicting that Roman Reigns will be retaining this evening. So what if the big shock is that he doesn't, that Finn Balor actually wins the match? Of course, anything goes. It's an Extreme Rules match. It's the one match currently on the show where we can do anything and there's no repercussions from it in the match. There's no DQ, there's no count out. Everything's in favour of Roman. He's got the Usos by his side, and even though the Demon persona is there, what if Brock Lesnar, who knows he's got a match with Roman Reigns coming up at Crown Jewel, comes and costs Roman the championship? Because it's not about the title for Lesnar, it's about stealing his advocate Paul Heyman. Now, in logic, it doesn't make a lot of sense that Brock would take away a championship match for himself, but certainly that would be something that would shock the audience, would get everybody talking, and obviously would lead quite nicely to what's going to go on further down the line. An alternative idea would be someone from Monday Night Raw coming to confront Roman after retaining the championship. Maybe it's the champion Big E, or maybe it's someone that wants to be a contender, and what they are saying is, yes, we know you're going to face Brock Lesnar down the line, but with the draft coming up, you could be coming to my show. So it could be a nice build for the draft at least. Maybe it gives an excuse for Roman to be on Raw the next night to confront this person. Maybe it builds to start a build a program towards Survivor Series or something like that. So there's a couple of different twists and ideas, but honestly, I don't think we're going to get that sort of stuff play out. But I hope whatever WWE does tonight is strategic and fun for the main event, because it is the one extreme match we've got on the show. Mike, attend Habs Mike, my next question now. Most likely, the Demon does not win the Universal title tomorrow night. Obviously tonight at the time of recording. What does WWE need to do to protect Balor and keep him strong? It can't be a clean loss or gimmick is ruined. Congrats on episode 100. Thank you very much. I'd say probably a screwy finish probably is the safe way of doing it for Finn Balor, but at the same time, if he was to lose a match tonight, it doesn't have to be the end. I mean, it's how you come the other side of it. If Finn Balor just drops to the mid card or the lower part of the card and we totally forget him into obscurity, yeah, the gimmick's completely ruined. But wins make such a difference. It's all about the story. I did the live Q&A this week, as I said earlier in this episode, with Ella J, and we were talking about someone that made a comment about Deonna Purrazzo, who, you know, she was losing all the time in NXT. Person didn't really take her with much credibility. She's gone to Impact, and now they see her as a star. So it is all in the way that someone is presented on our TV screens. And if Finn Balor, despite losing tonight, comes back and has a good story that can follow on to this and lead into the next part of narrative for him, and he can get some wins and some momentum back, then it's not going to be too damaging in the long term. Everything has to finish at some point. I think the reason why a lot of us feel a bit lackluster about the Demon coming in tonight and losing is because there's not been the greatest build to bring that Demon. He sort of just appeared really without really much explanation. It's just, oh, we've needed to go to that place to Demon Finn Balor, but we've not really heard the words of why the Demon needed to be brought out. So I hope even on the kickoff that's given some explanation, because it just adds a bit more value to what we're seeing tonight. But at the same time, yeah, wins is the way going forward. If he loses tonight, win a series of matches after this, we'll forget about this in about 1-2 months time from now. Or the alternative, put him on a different brand to Roman Reigns, and that way he can challenge for the top title that isn't on the same show as Roman within the next few weeks. Beyond the Ring podcast, of our next question: do you see any chance of Demon King winning the Universal title from Roman Reigns? As a side note, by not dropping to Reigns next week. I know that it has an obvious answer, but for fun, anyway, you'll see. Well, never say never in WWE. Of course, I have predicted that Roman Reigns will win, but like I said, the shock value would be if Balor was to win this evening, it would get everybody talking. But unfortunately, I do stay where I am, and I hope the match is going to be good. I think it's going to be an epic match between the two, so let's see what WWE does present this evening. It certainly is exciting. For those that want to see my full predictions, they are available for you on the channel right now. Scott Retro Wrestling with the next question now. Congrats on the 100th episode, thank you very much. What has been your favourite retro review you have done on your channel? Well, with regards to guests, of course, I enjoy all of them. I can't really say that I have not enjoyed any of them. I think there's been great fun with everyone I've collaborated with. But as for shows themselves, I'd probably have to go with WrestleMania 17, as it's my favourite show of all time. But it was also really special to go back to do Money in the Bank 2011, because obviously the summer of Punk, that electricity in Chicago with CM Punk vs John Cena is one of the more special moments in recent wrestling history. So for me, I'd have to give a special shout out to that as well. But as I say, for collaborations with everyone, absolutely loved each and every one. I can't wait to do more. And of course, the next retro review will be coming out in October, and the poll is still available on the community tab for you right now of which show you'd like to see with the show reviewed this October. Last question coming from Cherry Jerry. Who in professional wrestling world would you assume to become the new Ghostbusters, and why? Nice, fun, retro question just to end things off. And I'm going to give a retro answer, I think, for you, picking 4 people that could be the Ghostbusters then for you. The Undertaker, I think, is the first obvious one that comes to mind. He's taken on all these sort of characters that have come in, mystical characters over the years in wrestling, so he certainly would be one. Why not have Kane by his side as well? I'll go for Sting as well. Of course, when he used to take on Vader back in the early 90s, those White Castles of Fear and stuff like that. So he's used to going in these sort of obscure worlds as well, taking on the supernatural. And last but not least, let's bring actually up to date for it, Bray Wyatt, the Fiend character as well. Definitely supernatural in a nutshell, would be perfect for the role. If you had a female into it, of course, Alexa Bliss would be the other option for that. Certainly a fun question to finish things off this week. Just before I go, I want to give also a quick shout out to Smacked Raw Pod, as well as Jofo in the Ring and Good Cop Bad Cop Wrestling Podcast as well, for sending congratulations as well on episode 100. Thank you to everyone that's put in your questions here today. It really has been a lot of fun answering them. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe as well, and drop a comment as well in the comment section. I look forward to interacting with you on any of the topics that have been discussed in this video. Don't forget as well, you can get involved on the next AskSCW. Drop a question here on YouTube, or you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all should be going on your screen right about now. The road to episode 200 begins here, and just to give a bit of direction for this series going forward, we'll be doing just one question per person going forward, because obviously with how things are now in the world, I want to make sure that I can still give this series everything I can, give everybody the same sort of shout outs. So for time reasons, I think it's better that I leave it now where everyone has one question, so everyone gets a shout in videos going forward. But that's all from me. Thank you for watching as always. Like I said, check out these videos on the screen for you right about now. And as I say, draft week is coming up next week. We'll give my full predictions for the WWE Draft 2021, and multiple videos on the draft as well available on the channel already, so go and check those out. But thank you for watching. Have yourselves a good one. This has been AskSCW episode 100. Take care. Have yourselves a great day.